Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing. And I apologize if I sound a little stuffy this morning. I guess I picked up some kind of seasonal cold or something, but we're still out here testing because I'm definitely curious to see what today's slug combination can do, because I think it can really give us some surprisingly good results based on some previous testing with a similar combination. But for the shell I brought out here today, I picked up some of these, the Brenneke Magnum 20 gauge slugs. They are a 20 gauge, 3 inch, 1 ounce silver slug, moving about 1,476 feet per second is their velocity claim. Pretty specific claim, but that's traditional Brenneke stuff. And on the back here, they do claim a 1.8 inch group at 55 yards. So we'll see how accurate that number actually is. But a couple months ago, we did try some of the 20 gauge Brenneke Green Lightning slugs through today's setup, and they were pretty decent. So we'll see how these Magnum 1 ounce silver slugs can actually do. And as for the setup we're going to be running them through, I brought out my Stevens 301 20 gauge. It has a 26-inch barrel, and for a choke, I have an improved cylinder in the gun. Typically, Brenneke says either cylinder or improved cylinder. We've seen a number of really good results from this exact setup with this improved cylinder, so that's where we're going to be at today. And up on top here is a Nikon Inline XR. Technically, yes, it's a muzzleloader scope, but it will work for our testing purposes today. Either way, this setup has been a surprisingly decent slug performer, so we'll see if it likes the little bit heavier 1 ounce silver slugs. So as for our test today, we're going to run it the same as we always do with these slug tests. I unfortunately don't have a ton of these slugs, so we have to work with what I do have. So we'll shoot a 3-shot group at 50 yards and another 3-shot group at 100 yards, and all of those shots will be through the chronograph as well. It's not a perfect test, but it will at least tell us if this combination is any good or not. So enough talking, let's get you guys set up with a view of the 50-yard target, and we'll shoot our group, move out to 100, shoot our second group, and then come back here to the bench and see how it all performed. So let's get to shooting our groups and see what the 1 ounce 20 gauge silver slugs can do. Alright, so let's take a peek at our velocities here real quick before we look at our target. The boss claim was 1476, and I think we were bouncing right around or maybe just a little bit over that number. So with a 26-inch barrel, I'd say we're looking pretty decent for velocity. But let's go through here and see what it actually gave us. So for a high, we had 1510. For a low, we had 1421. That gave us an average of 1465. So just a touch under that boss claim, but I still think we're pretty much right there where they're saying we should be. And of course, for a 1 ounce slug at 1465, here's your energy numbers and stuff, so you can see what we're pushing out of the muzzle for that particular round. But that gave us an extreme spread of 89 feet per second and a standard deviation of 27. So definitely a little bit wider of a spread at, what was it, 89 feet per second or so total. So maybe not the highest quality, super consistent type of loadings, but overall, I'd say we're seeing box claim here at the end of the day. So looking pretty good for velocity, but what kind of accuracy did they give us? Let's go check out our target and see what we got. Alright, so let's take a look at our target here and see what we got for accuracy. And right off the bat, without even measuring them, they seem to pretty much be a 50-yard type of loading, at least out of my setup. They're not terrible, but we've definitely seen way better out of other slugs through that same exact setup. So let's start over there on the left with our 50-yard target. We had these 3 shots right here. Definitely not the most impressive for 50 yards, but we'll measure them and see what it gave us. Alright, so 50 yards gave us 2.23 inches, and that is a little bit larger than their 1.8 inch 55-yard boss claim, but it's not completely out of the realm either, considering what they're claiming. Now, it might look a little deceiving on the target, the way that it kind of flaked off, but all 3 of those were flying perfectly straight. All of our shots today were nice and stable, so that definitely was not a problem. So let's move over to the right target, which was our 100-yard group. Now, at 100 yards, I was aiming at this top red dot because I didn't know how much drop we would have with a 1 ounce projectile when that is not what I'm zeroed with, and it seems like holding up there right at that top red dot put us pretty centered up overall. Now we definitely opened up out here. We shot one of these, then we hit way over here, which I don't think was me pulling it, but considering our third shot was another one over here, I gave it a fourth, which got this one down here. And I definitely felt good about that last bottom trigger pull down here. So it just opened up quite a bit here at 100 yards. So I'll measure it both with and without that one top left flyer and give you both numbers so you can see what the difference is and decide for yourself which one you want to use. All right, so our closest 3 shots were 5.76, and that was for this 3-shot group right here. If we measured, including this guy up here, it would be a 7.9-inch spread. So it really wasn't too out of the ordinary there. We saw what, a 2.3-inch spread or so at 50, which opened up to a little over 5.5 or so at 100. That's relatively to be expected here at the end of the day. And I did notice that it seemed like right around the 50-yard mark, we started losing the little tail piece, which we'll look at here in a second, out of the back of those shells. So that definitely could have played into why we opened up our groups a little bit like we did. If they retained that little tail piece in the back of the slug, that might have helped us out. Overall, I'd say they're pretty decent at 50 yards if you wanted to hunt with them, at least out of this particular setup. Would they be good enough out at 100? Probably so, but ultimately, a 1-ounce 20-gauge slug at 50 yards, that's good enough to get the job done. Although definitely not the best we've seen. And the Green Lightning Brenneke slugs did perform a little better than this. So now let's swing around here and look at the couple little tail pieces I found out of the back of those slugs. All right, here's a few of those little tail pieces that stick up in the back of those slugs that I found. These 3 came from between 50 and 60 yards, and I'm sure the rest of them were probably there too, but they were kind of tricky to find with the snow patches in the grass. Either way, I definitely think if these would have held on and stuck in the back of the slug a little better or a little longer, we might have seen a little better accuracy out at 100 yards. But that is what the little tail pieces look like, and if we're dropping them a little bit early, it could potentially play with our accuracy a little, but we're definitely not over constricting it or anything like that. There's no damage to these. They look very much normal. They were just separating a little bit earlier than probably what Brenneke was intending them to do. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about those results right there? I'd call it pretty mediocre. At 50 yards, it's not the most impressive thing we've seen, but it would work if you wanted to take that combo out on a deer hunt. Now out at 100, we definitely opened it up a little bit. It's definitely a little bit larger than what I would like to see for a 100-yard whitetail hunt, but if you needed it, it would probably still do the job okay for you. So I'd say we're somewhere in the middle. Definitely not super impressive, but not absolutely atrocious either, and we've seen much better out of other Brenneke slugs and just other standard rifled slugs through that 301 before. So I don't know, maybe these are just a little bit heavy for caliber at 1 ounce and a 20 gauge. It's definitely a possibility, or they could be losing their tails a little bit too early and just starting to float those slugs down range just a little bit, which could have opened our group up, you know, that extra half inch, maybe inch or so out at those longer ranges. Either way, definitely not the perfect combination of slug shell for this particular 301. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is it about what you expected? Were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the Brenneke classic 1-ounce Silver Slug 20 gauge rounds? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? Is that good enough for you to take out on a deer hunt? Or would you want to see them fine-tuned in a little better than that? And is there another slug combo that you want to see us try through this 301? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description down below if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.